My wife, learning I was infertile, grew distant and eventually left for another man. Her family and friends reached out, but I refused to help. It's common to hear statements like, "I never saw it coming." That's exactly how it was for me. Though I had been married to my wife for 4 years, I honestly thought we were doing well. For the most part, I thought we were in accord. We had a life plan in place. The difficulty is that I felt we both wanted children. We started serious discussions about it as soon as we got married. She would continuously emphasize her wish for 2 or 3 children, droning on about the names we would give them, nursery decor, and other details. She would even spend hours online planning our future children's lives, browsing baby goods and clothing. It kept us linked and provided a topic for discussion. We were excited to begin this new chapter in our lives together, and everything seemed to be going as planned. But then we got some horrible news, which devastated me. After a few months of attempting to conceive, we went to the doctor to figure out what was happening. To shorten a long story short, it was me. The doctor essentially told us that our chances of naturally becoming parents were slim because my count was far too low. It felt like a stomach punch. I felt unworthy. Our entire set of plans went in an instant. The news hit me hard, incredibly hard. I found myself in a bad situation for a while. I was a total catastrophe at first, but therapy eventually helped. At first, she appeared to be quite supportive, saying that it didn't matter and that she would be okay with just the 2 of us. However, there was something off about the way she said it from the outset. She appeared to have dropped it way too quickly. She was all about creating a family 1 minute and then suddenly said she didn't need children to be happy. I understand that people's opinions evolve, but her entire behavior struck me as weird. She had stopped talking about children since she was preoccupied with baby names. Furthermore, it appeared that she began to perceive me in a different light. She would suddenly start making tiny barbs at me, something she had never said before. She would make comments about how I wasn't taking care of myself, how I should exercise, or how I should be more productive at home. Yes, I could have gained a few pounds, but it appeared like she was always looking for reasons to accuse me of something. When I asked her about the dramatic change in attitude, she dismissed it. She said that I was very sensitive and was just imagining things. But I knew there was something wrong. She was not like the woman I married, who would sit with me for hours discussing our future plans. She wasn't particularly harsh, but she had a frigid demeanor about her, as if she had already checked out mentally and was only acting. I think as time passed, I grew to trust her when she assured me that everything was fine. I didn't want to come across as needy or insecure, so I stopped pursuing the topic. In any event, after a few years, we were barely getting by. We had fallen into a practice of rarely discussing anything serious. We seemed like housemates rather than husband and wife. She would consistently ignore my attempts to discuss alternative options, such as adoption or surrogacy, by declaring that she did not want to consider them. I never believed her when she said, "As long as we're together, I'm happy." She seemed more interested in convincing herself than convincing me. She suddenly informed me that she wanted to go on a girls' trip. It wasn't unusual for her to travel with her buddies. She had done it several times previously, and I had always supported her. She had long expressed a desire to visit to America with her friends while we were living in Brighton. We had built trust over the years, so I didn't give it much attention. I ensured she had everything she needed, helped her pack, and took her to the airport. I remember her final remarks before she left. She looked at me and said, "Thank you for being so supportive." I found it unusual that she would say that when I hadn't done anything particularly spectacular. But she appeared so earnest that I discounted it as a simple expression of gratitude. That night, I stayed up to ensure everything ran perfectly. I called her when she came, kept myself busy about the house, watched TV, kept track of the time, and waited for her to text me to let me know she had arrived. Her flight was supposed to take about 9 hours, so I wasn't too concerned at first. When I realized her flight had landed, I contacted her to check in. The phone continued ringing but no one answered. I didn't give it much attention. I figured she was fatigued and had gone straight to her hotel to rest. However, as AM dawned and I still hadn't heard from her, a gnawing worry crept in. I assumed she was merely busy or her phone was on quiet, so I tried calling again and texted her a few times. After a few more hours of radio silence, I was completely freaked. Finally, I called her sister to see if she'd heard from her. Nothing. I was starting to panic. In the hopes that something had gone wrong with her phone or that she just hadn't had time to check in, I even called her purported travel companions. However, they were equally bewildered as I was. When I contacted, they said they hadn't joined her on the vacation. They were actually sitting in a cafe just 2 streets away from our house, drinking their morning coffee. That's when it really hit me. She was not traveling with any other girls. She had no friends with her. She hadn't traveled with anyone. She had simply disappeared. My stomach felt like it had fallen through the floor as I sat there holding the phone. I couldn't understand it. Why would she tell me that lie? Why didn't she tell me before leaving? I tried to tell myself that it was a mistake, perhaps she had missed a connecting flight or was delayed due to an emergency. But, deep inside, I knew the truth. She had planned it. Her stating, "Thank you for being so supportive," and the entire story of a girl's trip were all part of whatever plan she had in mind. I was at a loss for what to do. It seemed like I was locked in a nightmare, unable to awaken. I'd never married a woman like her. I didn't even recognize the person. The coldness, the fact that she had stopped discussing our future, and the subtle jabs at my appearance and health, all of this immediately made sense. I just hadn't noticed. Perhaps I didn't want to see that she'd been drifting away for a time. I just sat there that night, staring at my phone, waiting for a call, a text, anything. However, nothing happened, and I knew it wouldn't. I remember lying there staring at the ceiling, and when I awoke the next morning, I assumed it was all a bad dream. However, when I noticed that her side of the bed was vacant, reality hit in. She had actually left. After packed her bag, she vanished. The promises I had made to myself the previous evening, maybe she was late, maybe her phone died, were no longer legitimate. She had plainly planned it. She wanted to leave. I was in utter denial for the first few days. I kept contacting her phone, wanting to hear her voice and get an explanation. I even left messages, hoping she'd respond. I struggled to find words half of the time, but I kept trying. However, all I got in return was quiet. Strangely, the silence made matters worse. It was as if I'd always been a stranger to her, left alone to figure out what had gone wrong. Her family was originally as astonished as I was. They had not heard from her, and her mother had no idea of her plans. In the end, I visited her family more times than I could count, desperate to meet with her mother and gain some answers. They must have felt bad for me. When I couldn't bring myself to cook, her mother would make dinners for me. She occasionally allowed me to stay at their home. She'd sit with me as I talked about all the little things that didn't make sense, trying to figure out why my life had suddenly become so complicated. To be honest, there were times when I felt too numb to talk. I would simply sit there in solitude. I alternated between wrath, sorrow and guilt. What went wrong? I kept asking myself. Was there a sign that I missed? Wasn't I paying enough attention to her? On certain days, I would go over all of our disputes and chats, attempting to figure out what had caused her to leave. I kept thinking about what I should have done better to save our marriage. It may sound dramatic, but I was possessed by the desire to find it out. I clung to the hope that obtaining the answer would somehow improve everything. I barely slept. I barely ate. My productivity began to decrease. People began to notice. When people inquired about my well-being, I would dismiss it as I was preoccupied with personal concerns. Admitting the truth, that my wife had abandoned me without saying anything, was too embarrassing. I eventually confided in a few close pals. They did their utmost to divert me by taking me out and pushing me to move on. But even when I was among them, my thoughts kept going to her. Where was she? Why wasn't I enough for her to stay? One of the most difficult parts was the constant inquiry from others, neighbors, relatives, acquaintances, and even former coworkers who had learned I was married. Each time someone inquired, "How's married life treating you?" Or, "How's your wife?" It was like peeling off a new scab. I'd simply grin and fib, assuring them everything was all right. But each time I said that lie, it felt heavier. Finally, treatment proved to be the only thing that helped. I'd never gone before, but after months of barely functioning, I realized I couldn't do it alone. I needed to speak with someone who was neutral and did not carry the weight of our common experience. I contacted a therapist and began attending weekly sessions. It helped. I talked constantly about her fury, betrayal, and the hole she had left behind. I talked about the sleepless nights, about lying awake and replaying every scene over and over. The therapist let me realize something I had not been able to accept. If she really wanted to stay, she would have. It was not my fault, she decided to depart. That was a difficult pill to swallow. For a long time, I believed myself that I was flawed and had somehow turned her away. However, I eventually came to see things differently. I chose to ignore her long-standing coldness and isolation, believing that things would improve on their own. I had convinced myself that if I just kept my cool and put in enough effort, I could save our marriage by myself. The revelation that I couldn't, that nothing was ever enough, hurt. As time passed, I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. It wasn't until she left that I realized how much I'd lost in our marriage. I had always tried my hardest to make her happy and to keep our home life comfortable. But now, with so much free time, I'm at a loss for what to do. So I began revisiting old pastimes that I had long forgotten. I tried making fresh meals. I went to the gymnasium. I started reading novels that I'd been putting off for years. Finally, my work improved. At first, I was just going through the motions, barely keeping up. However, when I began to feel more like myself, I increased my effort at work. It was one of the few things I still felt in control of, and it gave me a sense of success. I'd always been brilliant at what I did, but now I threw myself entirely into it. The extra hours, the focus, they paid off. I got a promotion. Something I would not have accomplished if I had spent all of my time drowning in my sadness. Nevertheless, there were difficult days. A picture, an old movie ticket stub, or another minor memory would abruptly transport me back to the past. I'd find myself wondering if she ever thought about me or regretted what she'd done. But as time passed, those instances got fewer and farther apart. Each time, it grew little easier to let go. I also reconnected with people I had lost touch with after getting married. We went trekking. We went to the golf range. I began doing activities that I hadn't done in years. Having friends by my side, people who weren't caught up in the turmoil and could support me without dragging me back into the pain, was a huge comfort. Looking back, I realized I had invested too much of myself in that connection. As her husband, I had lost a huge part of me. When she departed, it felt as if she had stolen a piece of me with her. However, I was gradually rediscovering myself. It was not quick, it was not easy. But I was making progress. At the end of that year, when I looked in the mirror, I saw more than simply a man whose wife had abandoned him. I'd rebuilt. I had survived. I was stronger now. For the first time in years, I felt free to live my life without her shadow lurking over me. And I took pride in it. I genuinely thought I'd moved on from everything. After all of the commotion, things had begun to feel normal again, or as normal as it could be. Work was progressing smoothly. My friends kept me busy. I had a routine down. Even my thoughts of her had disappeared. Sure, there were occasional flashbacks, odd recollections that appeared unexpectedly, but they weren't as often as previously, when everything I did seemed to be linked to her. She was the last person I expected to see standing outside my door on Saturday morning. But there she was. She holds a baby in her arms. I got chilled. It was like witnessing a ghost. For a little while, my brain ceased to operate. She appeared nearly identical, perhaps a touch worn down, but otherwise unchanged. And the way she looked at me, as if she truly believed I would be delighted to see her, moved me. I thought I had stopped caring. But meeting her again resurfaced emotions I had long suppressed. For a minute, I stood there in silence, staring. She smiled as if nothing had happened and asked, "May I come in?" A nerve. After everything she has done, she simply walks up here, expecting me to welcome her back with open arms. However, I kept my cool and told her, "No. You can stay right there." I said that I did not want her in my home, bringing all of the chaos back into the place I had established for myself. Despite her bewildered demeanor, she remained where she was and simply began her story. She began by saying, "I know this may come as a shock, but I wanted to come back and explain everything." Her look was hopeful, as if she genuinely felt I would be eager to listen. I was tempted to simply close the door in her face. Perhaps even laugh. But I was too curious. I was curious about the reason for her disappearance and the tale she had come up with. She went on to say that she had made a mistake in leaving and had now recognized that she had lost the best thing that had ever occurred to her. Not my words, but hers. She claimed that after much thought, and after having this child, she had finally realized what was truly essential in life. After years of ignoring me, it appeared that what was most important had unexpectedly brought her back to my doorstep. "This is our second chance," she said, looking down at the newborn. What I was hearing was incredible. Our second chance? As if this child were some sort of miraculous reset button, allowing us to resume where we left off. I was outraged on the inside, but my expression remained neutral. She went on to suggest that, despite having made a terrible mistake, we could now start over, just the three of us. She wanted us to be a family again. Why did you leave? That was the question that had haunted me since she first appeared. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I wasn't sure how long I could do it. Now that she was present, I needed to hear the truth. For years, I tortured myself with unlimited possibilities, attempting to make sense of everything. She hesitated, looking down at her feet, as if embarrassed. Then she finally said it. Or, at least, what she said was true. She stated that she had gone because she wanted a child, And she had found someone who could provide one, because I could not. She spoke nonchalantly, as if it were insignificant, as if she hadn't ruined my life, as if I should simply nod, accept, and go on. She went on to explain that, while the man she had left me for did not remain, she had already given birth and had realized she wanted me back. How convenient. I paused to digest what she was saying. She was standing here, confessing that she had abandoned me, fled with another guy, had his child, and now expected me to simply accept it. To pretend that none of this had ever occurred. So, you left. Found someone else. Had his baby? And now you think you can just come back and pretend like nothing happened? I responded with curiosity. She burst into tears and apologized repeatedly, acknowledging she had made a tremendous mistake. I remained unaffected. She kept talking, attempting to persuade me that she knew she was meant to be with me. That I was the person she actually loved. To be honest, it was difficult to maintain a straight face. She sounded deluded. The desperation was written all over her face. It wasn't love that brought her back. It was terror. Then she attempted to guilt-trip me. She went on and on about how tough it had been for her as a single mother, as if she were the victim in this whole situation. As if her own decisions had not brought her here. She assured me that this time, she was prepared to make it work. She said she needed my help. All I could think was, who does she think I am? I let her continue. I stood there listening. Then I'd had enough. You made your choice a long time ago, I informed her. And now you have to live with it. There's no second chance here. She appeared shocked. As if she had never considered the possibility that I may say no. As if she actually believed she could simply walk back into my life whenever it suited her. Then she felt enraged. Just when I thought she'd finally get it and leave, she lashed out, accusing me of being selfish. She demanded that I give her another chance and let her repair things. She even had the nerve to say, I could have taken half of everything and divorced you back then if I wanted to. And then she said it. The house should still be hers. At that point, I felt a burst of relief. Her disguise had finally slipped. Finally, I was seeing her actual self. I did not argue. I did not yell. I simply looked her in the eye and replied, we're done. You wanted a different life, and now you have it. This is no longer my responsibility, I simply stated, staring at her. Then I closed the door in her face, interrupting her mid-sentence. I was not interested in hearing what else she had to say. As I stood there, listening to her muffled screaming from the other side of the door, I felt strangely calm. She had the ability to shout, cry, and knock at will. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never allow her back in. The woman I had once loved and married no longer existed. In her place stood a stranger, a self-centered, entitled stranger who believed she could pick up the pieces whenever it suited her. I stepped away from the door and sat down, feeling lighter than I have in years. I assumed that was the end of it. I figured she would eventually understand and walk away. But no. Instead, she began hammering on the door, screaming various things. Her bravery is admirable. She had the guts to stand up and insist that I listen to her. Here. At my door. The one spot I fought to recapture after she abandoned me. At first, I pondered ignoring her and letting her scream until she got exhausted. But then curiosity got the better of me. I was curious what kind of excuses she would come up with this time. So I opened the door. Just enough to let her know I was listening. Not enough to allow her in. She appeared stunned. As if she'd just been smacked. As if she expected me to react differently. As if we were simply having a usual dispute rather than coping with the implications of her abandonment. Then she began into a long monologue. She expressed her willingness to forgive me for closing the door on her. About her desire to start over. She went on and on about how, if we both worked hard, we could get things fixed. And that's when I lost it. I laughed. Not simply a chuckle. A full, sincere and unrestrained laugh. Because this woman possessed more nerve than I had ever seen. When I did, she snapped. She was enraged. As if I had harmed her. As if I were the one who should feel guilty. You left, I informed her, my tone even. You had your chance, and you threw it all away. I'm not just going to pretend none of that happened because you feel like it. Her face turned crimson. Then she started talking about how lost she had felt after leaving. She discovered her mistake too late. You don't understand how hard it was for me, she told me. I didn't believe any of it. No, I replied. You made the decision to leave. You planned it, you lied about it, and then, you went through with it. Now, I scoffed. Now your regret means nothing. And that's when she finally gave up the act. Her entire demeanor changed. The gloomy, remorseful woman was gone. In her place was the bitter, greedy individual she had always been. She attacked me. She accused me of being harsh and not having the grace to give her another chance. Then she said it. If I'd wanted to, I could have taken everything from you back then. I could have taken half of everything you own. She genuinely stated that. I just stood there, staring at her in bewilderment. This woman, who had abandoned me without saying anything, now claimed she was deserved something for not screwing me over even more. As if she deserved recognition for not being as bad as she could have been. So, what? Am I supposed to be grateful? I requested an explanation. Grateful that you only ditched me and didn't take my stuff too. Her expression shifted between wrath, desperation, and remorse. But I didn't care anymore. That was it. That was the point at which all of the years I had spent questioning myself, wondering if I had done something wrong, vanished. For the first time in years, I saw her as she truly was. I felt free. But she wasn't done. She began pacing my porch, shouting about how I'd regret not giving her another chance. I'd never find somebody like her again. She even tried to make it appear as if I was the one losing, as if she were the prize. It was surreal. This was the same woman who had demolished everything we'd constructed. Yet there she was, acting as if I should be asking her to stay. When she realized I wasn't going to cave, she grew louder. She began ranting about how I forced her to leave in the first place. She claimed that none of this would have occurred if I had been more accepting of the entire kid scenario. Her rationale was perplexing. She was actually implying that I had failed her as a husband because I was unable to conceive. As if this validated her decision to have a child with someone else. The mental gymnastics were incredible. To be honest, I was stunned that she was attempting to blame me for her actions. I glanced at her and commented, "Look, if you wanted a kid that badly, you could have just told me the truth. You didn't have to lie to my face and pretend everything was fine while planning your escape." She gave no response. She simply gazed at me, as if I had hit her. But I did not let her talk. "You made that decision entirely on your own," I continued. "And now you have to live with it. That's not my problem." She made one last attempt. Her face returned to that depressed expression, and she pleaded with me to think about the boy. She said I was being unjust by ignoring him. She tried to make me feel guilty by holding the youngster in her arms. As if I were the villain in this scenario. But I was not buying into it. "I don't know that child," I informed her firmly. "I have nothing to do with him. He's not mine. And neither are you." That was it. I noticed it in her eyes. For the first time, she understood. She understood that I would never change my opinion. I would never allow her back into my life. The wrath in her expression dissipated, to be replaced by something else, perhaps regret. Or maybe she was just frustrated because her manipulation wasn't working. I didn't care. She had expected me to fold, forgive, and accept her back. But she was nothing to me now. She waited there for a few more seconds, as if waiting for me to reconsider my decision. I didn't utter another word. And as it dawned on her that I meant every word, I stood there, observing her. Then I closed the door. This time, I did not wait for her to knock again. This time, I knew in my heart that I'd already made up my mind. There was no turning back. I'm not sure why, but I felt like I had finally won. It ended as I moved away from the door. She'd spent a lot of time attempting to manipulate her way back into my life. But I had freedom. There would be no second chances for either her or us. She was now merely a memory, something I had finally put behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt as like I could breathe again. After so many years of pain and guilt, I felt at peace. And you know what? It was pleasurable. When I closed the door behind her, I felt a strange sensation of calm sweep over me. I no longer felt sad. I was not furious. I wasn't even astonished anymore. It was as if all the years of effort I had put into her had vanished, along with the pain, guilt, and never-ending wondering. I was prepared to go on. Because I had finally received the closure I had never known I needed. This time, it was really over. However, life never ends smoothly. A few days later, I received a text from her mother. She apologized. She expressed her embarrassment at how her daughter had handled everything. She had tried to reason with her, but it was evident that it had not worked. Her mother was a kind woman. She had been kind to me when her daughter departed, and I could tell she was genuinely upset about the situation. I didn't have anything against her. However, I did not want to be dragged back into any of it. So I just answered, "Thanks for checking in," and left it at that. I wasn't going to waste time justifying my decisions, and I wasn't going to give her mother any additional information. She knew it was over because she understood. Over the next few weeks, I discovered bits and pieces via social media and mutual relationships. She had allegedly moved back in with her parents, and things were not going well. The child's father, the man she had left me for, was not involved at all. He had bailed. She was left to figure things out on her own, as he had apparently not committed to the long term. Few people wanted to help her. She'd burned almost every bridge. Her previous acquaintances, many of whom had backed me when she initially went missing, had little sympathy for her. They were not about to get drawn back into her drama. They'd all moved on. And frankly, you can't blame them. Even her parents weren't pleased. They did not have the financial resources to maintain her and the child. I knew this because immediately after her mother texted me, her father called. Curiosity got the best of me. I almost didn't respond. He was clear yet respectful. He added that they were hurting financially and quietly suggested that I might be able to assist them. He spoke about the youngster and how terrible things were for them. "We know you cared about her once," the man added. I listened politely, but the irony of the situation made me laugh within. Then he went on and on about how his daughter only needed a little support to get back on her feet. That's when I joined in. "Your daughter made her choices," I said, my voice calm but forceful. "I am neither in a position, nor in the right frame of mind, to help her." He didn't press the subject. I believe he received the message. Then, out of nowhere, individuals I hadn't communicated with in years, her old friends, began to reach out. Some attempted to use guilt, telling me that she was struggling and that I should find it in my heart to give her another chance. One even had the guts to suggest, "The child requires a father figure. Do not let resentment prevent you from doing the right thing." I refused to back down. I refused to let anyone make me feel guilty about my decision. I'd already given the woman everything I had. Years of self-doubt, trying to be enough, and she'd thrown it all away. Instead of expecting me to save her, she had to accept responsibility for her own actions. The calls and mails gradually slowed and eventually stopped completely. It seems that everyone had finally understood I was serious. That I'd moved on. That I wouldn't get pulled back in. And that's when I really felt at ease. For the first time in years, my life seemed normal. I had friends. My job. My routines. I'd recreated my life on my own terms. It wasn't lavish or glamorous, but it was mine. Ironically, I found myself rediscovering joy in the small things. Things I had overlooked when I was married. I began reading novels that I had planned to read for years. I cooked my own meals. I took long walks. And for the first time, I felt liberated. I didn't need anybody's approval. I wasn't always concerned about someone else's happiness. For once, I arrived first. Every now and then, I would come across someone who knew us both. They'd say, "Hey, whatever happened to her?" I would respond briefly, politely, and change the subject. I didn't need to revisit that part of my life. It wasn't like I was hiding anything. I had previously perfected the capacity to abandon her. The last I heard, things were still not going well for her. She was jumping between her parents' house and sleeping on friends' couches. She couldn't keep a consistent job. Occasionally, someone I barely communicated with would message me, saying she needed aid from anyone who would listen. Some even suggested that she was still hoping I would reconsider. That maybe one day, I'd alter my mind and play father to her child. But that wasn't going to happen. I'd worked too hard to reconstruct my life. She'd made her bed. And I wasn't going to be the one picking up the pieces. Nothing could bring me back into that chapter. I was finished. In the end, I believe I found the closure I needed. She was now facing the repercussions of her own actions. And me? For the first time since she departed, I felt entirely and really free. I'd finally let go of the weight she had left behind. And you know what? I was pleased. Not in a big dramatic way. Just content, and it was enough. Caught my pregnant wife on camera cuddling with a coworker. Now I'm questioning everything, including paternity. My wife, 38F, and I, 39M, have been together for 12 years. I don't know how to characterize it other than as the perfect connection. In 12 years, I believe we've only raised our voices at each other perhaps 2 or 3 times. We do everything together, but we've never had a problem letting each other live our own lives and pursue our own interests. We bought a house where we wanted, and we both had fantastic high-paying jobs with excellent work-life balance. Basically, it's been everything but perfect. We've been trying to become pregnant for 2 years and haven't been successful. We were preparing to begin fertility treatments when I returned home from a business trip, and guess what? She was pregnant. I got this strange notion. Wait, I thought we didn't try during the week last month because of fertility testing. but I couldn't remember exactly since we were so busy. So I assumed I had misremembered. Now, I frequently travel across the country for work. Other than during COVID, I've been on the road for up to 40 weeks per year. Since COVID, it has been reduced, but still more than a week every month for the past 4 to 5 years. My wife has become quite friendly with the guy she works with. Let us call him Matt. Matt is slightly younger, around 34 million. I know him. He is married, and I know his wife. They've been working together for around 7 years. He's always been around, and we've been friendly. Have I ever suspected something was going on? No. But I've always thought you'd be a fool to believe there's no chance your partner may leave the relationship. Maybe I'm naive, but I've always considered it as a safety not to take my wife, or any previous companion, for granted. She has never given me cause to believe she would do that, but anything is conceivable. I was out of state for work about a month ago, while she remained at home. I asked her what she had been doing earlier in the day and she replied Matt was coming over for supper. This wasn't unusual. Matt stops by on occasion. Sometimes with his wife, sometimes alone, and occasionally when I'm not around. I didn't think much about it. We installed a security system with cameras inside and outside the house following an unrelated event a few years back. The cameras record footage, which she and I can view live. I frequently use those cameras to check on the dog while I, or both of us are away, because the rest of the system is monitored by a business in case an alert goes out. She knows I check those cams. There's even an installed system that allows me to communicate with them. If any of us is out of town, I'll play pranks on them, and she will do the same. She travels for work, although far less than I do. The point is, it's known that I check them frequently when I'm not at home. So I switch on the camera and see my 4-month pregnant wife sleeping on her side on the floor, with Matt sitting on her leg and massaging her hips with a foam roller. Okay, what the __ is this? I begin rewinding through the footage and they are eating and talking regularly. But then they get on the couch and share the same blanket. They are now feet to feet, but that couch isn't that huge. Then they move to the floor, and I logged in. Anyway, I text her while I'm still monitoring the cameras. They both appear like deer in headlights, and he swiftly departs. We get into an argument. She isn't angry with me for accusing her, but she is adamant that nothing happened, or ever will happen, and that what I witnessed was innocent. She complained about being in agony from the pregnancy, which I know is real. She is already experiencing back pain and other symptoms. The most significant moment of the conversation was when I questioned her, if I were there, would you two have been comfortable doing any of that in front of me? She hesitantly said, no, probably not. I told her I didn't want to talk after that, but we'd discuss it when I returned home in 3 days. That's when it occurred to me. What if my strange gut feeling about her telling me she was finally pregnant was related to this? What if my 1% chance came true and we did not have this child? It's now eating away at me while I spend 3 days alone in a motel 1,000 miles away. I resolved with myself that I believe it is less likely than more likely that something between them occurred, but my 1% has now increased to 10%, 20%, or possibly more. When I arrive home, she's walking on eggshells and doesn't say it. I wait to see what she will do. 2 days later, she finally brings it up and collapses. She claims nothing happened and that she would never cheat. She doesn't go beyond to prove her innocence, which I viewed as a positive sign. Anyway, we resolve the issue and continue forward, at least for the time being. I'm still coping and figuring out how to trust her after all this time. I'm gradually realizing that they've been pals for a long time. Maybe he has intentions, but I don't think she does. I've spent a lot of time with both of them and have never noticed anything wrong. What is destroying me right now is the concept that if I am wrong and something happens, I will be able to deal with it. What if the child is not mine? I've never mentioned it in our disputes or the few lengthy discussions we've had about the problem, and she hasn't either. Mostly because I don't want to further the situation by crushing her, especially if she's telling the truth, which I mostly believe. The only option I can think of at this point is to wait until the baby is delivered and then order a paternity test in secret. Should I do this? Should I tell her and deal with the situation now? If you were a woman in her circumstances and told the truth, would it ruin you or your opinion of me? If I asked you if you were lying, how would you respond? I don't want to ask such a vague question, but what should I do? Mini update. There are a lot of comments. Thank you everyone. More than I can handle directly, but I'll continue reading. Some have made valid comments about tackling it now rather than later, which I am contemplating more than previously. Thank you to those that concentrated solely on my relationship. I understand, but that is not my main focus right now. We've been discussing it a lot. My wife and I are fairly open with each other. I'm not saying I believe nothing happened, but I'm more concerned with paternity right now. If I need to track or spy on my wife using Life 360, then this relationship is gone. That is not the connection we have, nor is it one that I want or believe anyone should have. We are working to rebuild trust. As I said in this lengthy essay, my 1% suspicion increased to 10% or so. Trust me, I take my relationship seriously, but if the child isn't mine, there's no use in continuing the talk. I have previously addressed this with my lawyer. I don't live in a state where the birth certificate issue would be a problem. If I have documentation proving the child is not mine, divorce will be less of an issue. We are both in independent financial situations, so it will not matter much. I'll keep updating this page as long as possible and offer an update when and if anything is fixed. Update 1, May 10, 2024. She was out of the state on a work trip until late last night. It is Friday, and she is working from home in our kitchen today. I asked to speak and brought it up, requesting a paternity test. She quickly responded yes, without hesitation. She stated unequivocally that she has no reason to be concerned. She has no trouble taking the test right now. The one condition I left was that if it is at all intrusive, according to our doctors, I am fine with waiting till it is low risk. I'm not a doctor, and I have no idea what they'd have to do to test now, so we'll see. But she is aware, and we are receiving one. It was a decent and lengthy talk. We're currently sitting together for lunch. She has no idea I did this on here, therefore the new account because she is on here somewhere. Thanks to everybody for your assistance and opinions. A lot of you reminded me that we are already very open about everything, and if nothing happened, she wouldn't be concerned about getting a test. I was more concerned about her health and adding an absurd level of stress if there was a problem, given she is in a high-risk pregnancy and it has taken us so long to become pregnant. So again, thank you for your assistance. I suppose I could update whether the child is mine or not, but I'm not sure how long it will take. I am 90 to 95% certain the baby is mine, but this will help us continue the conversation. Update 2, because it appears to be a more relevant topic in this post than in the other, I do have the film. No, I have not spoken to Matt yet. He's informed her he wants to discuss it, but I've ordered them to wait. My relationship with my wife, as well as the paternity test, are currently the most important things. I will ultimately speak with Matt. No, I am not going to purposefully entangle Matt's wife. I don't see why I would, except to be vindictive. I won't cover for him, of course, but his relationship is his, and mine is mine. I'm not interested in making things worse. Whatever happens between him and his wife is none of my business. We've had a lengthy discussion about why my wife believed she could be intimate with someone else. Nothing is being neglected. I could write an essay about our history, her motivations, and my thoughts about it, but instead I'll simply state that I'm aware of it. She denies any more wrongdoing, but concedes it was not a good appearance. She was not thinking about it at the moment, and that is what we are currently dealing with. When asked if it appeared harmless and if my wife visited Matt's house when his wife was not present, I said that she was 4 months pregnant and I was at home. We've been so busy with work that the days have blended together. Trust me, we are quite open people who are at ease with themselves and one other. I'm not sure if she's been to his place without his wife. I mean, the 3 or 4 of us maybe only hang around once or twice a month, but they work directly together every day and have for years. So, obviously there is some closeness there. They are both in senior executive positions at their organization. I too have long-term female friends with whom I have traveled, had dinner, and hung out in hotel rooms, but I have never crossed any lines since it is not who I am. I'm married, and I adore my wife and life. I see no reason to do anything inappropriate. So yeah, the optics are awful, but I need to determine whether it's just lousy optics or anything else. Matt may have motives, but I'm not sure. That's the thing I need to figure out, if I trust her to handle it. She claims she has never been aware of Matt's intentions. She spends almost the same amount of time with him and his wife as he does with us. She works in a building nearby, while I reside on the coast while my company is headquartered in Chicago, so my coworker buddies are considerably more dispersed. We can't simply grab after-work beverages as others can. Because of this, I frequently attend her work hangouts rather than my own. I'm also acquainted with her CEO, so while it's not ideal, I've always trusted her. I've never had a reason not to, until now. This is the first fracture or ding in our 15-year-old trust. To clarify what happened that day, my wife said something to Matt, who froze. He murmured something I didn't hear and she added, "No, don't worry about it." He put something in the dishwasher and she let him out the front door. He did not jump out the window or anything. I'm not going to include every single nuance or detail in this post because it would take hours to write, and I'm not uploading security tape for strangers to see. I installed the security system after an event involving a stranger on the internet. I'm not suggesting nothing transpired between them, rather I'm not sure. That is what my wife and I talk about practically every day, and what we are going through. The original point of this post was that we had not discussed paternity. I didn't want to place her in a situation where she would lose the child, whether mine or not. Not only was I unable to describe every delicate detail, but I also included incorrect details about our life that had nothing to do with what happened. I used to be a minor public figure and some internet troll came across the country to threaten us with death. It grew to the point where the federal government had to intervene. People here are jumping to conclusions with far less knowledge than I do, and they are ignoring the original premise of the post and the questions I posed. Some inquired if I had informed Matt's wife. No, I have not. She is my wife's friend, but we don't spend much time together. I know her through my wife and I only see her every few months, at a bar after work or when they come over for dinner or to hang out. We are not best buddies. Should I actually go tell her, hey, your husband was at my place? I knew he was there because I observed him apply a foam roller to my wife's hips while sitting on her feet. It's pretty apparent there, and I'm not sure, but she might be carrying his baby. This is not a soap opera. I have nothing to tell her, so why would she believe me based on the scant facts I have? And why or how does that help my situation? If all of this is incorrect, then I've ruined my relationship by acting like a child and inciting drama for what appears to be vindictive reasons. Plus, I would place them in the same scenario as we are now, for something I don't even know is true. I believe you have completely lost the plot here. Update 3, August 21st, 2024. Hello everyone, here's your next update. I also included this in the recent update. This is where we are at. Yes, my wife is still extremely pregnant. She is at the hard to pick things up off the floor stage. She's due in 8 weeks, but it's actually 6 weeks. I simply looked at the calendar. We are currently having weekly ultrasounds. The youngster already weighs approximately 5 pounds and has a large head. Her and I had very lengthy, direct chats about everything. She is convinced that nothing has ever happened and never will. For a long time, she was furious with herself for triggering this and my doubts. I've done my best to correct this, because I need to keep the stress off her as much as possible right now. But it will definitely be reviewed after the birth. As I've stated throughout, my only concern is the child and the successful birth. Okay, mostly. Perhaps not only asterisk. The only thing we still disagree on is that I believe he was getting too close because he had developed feelings or was receiving attention that he wasn't getting elsewhere. She doesn't see it that way, but she has admitted that it is feasible, even if she was unaware of it. When I told her I wanted a paternity test, she readily consented, stating it was no problem at all. My only caveat was that it not be medically risky or stressful, as she is in a high-risk pregnancy. We both discussed it with our doctors, and they basically told us that our only option was to go to court since they wouldn't do one without the law involved, which we both thought was crazy. Her doctor was confused by it, so I didn't press too hard. To be honest, she pretty much demanded the test. I knew there were other alternatives, and I researched them, but I ultimately decided to wait until the birth. I already have a lab set up and ready for the test. I'm 95% confident it's unneeded, but I'm getting one for my own peace of mind and, most importantly, to ensure that nothing comes between me and my child. Thank you to everyone who has sent me supportive messages that I have not responded to. I'm going to go through them tonight before I leave again. For those of you who believe I should be acting like a 17-year-old high school student, either by being aggressive or purposefully cheating on my wife to illustrate a point, or implying other childish behavior, thank you for the entertainment. Stop watching TLC or TikTok. That idiotic drama isn't the way to go, kids. And to the one individual who recommended I provoke an accident with my wife, I hope you wind yourself in prison someday. It's quite unlikely that I'll return here after tonight, at least until I receive the test findings. If you're still interested in the results, check back in 1.5 to 2 months. I've been advised that the findings take roughly 48 hours after submission. I'll give you your moment then. Fiancé's toxic best friend torments me, my mental health suffers. Is our relationship doomed or can we recover before the wedding? My fiancé has the biggest heart, would literally give you the shirt, pants, and hat off his body if you asked for it. He's a recovering people pleaser, and I get it because I also used to be a people pleaser. We've been together for 5+ years. A few months ago, I started picking up on his best friend making some not so nice comments towards me. I'm trying to be vague, but let's just say this friend is the type to read who in the room would be most affected by being picked on, And then he picks and picks and picks on them until they can't take it anymore. Nobody ever really holds him accountable for this, and unfortunately I have somehow become his favorite target. I tried to put up with these comments, but it started getting really elaborate. The friend would make up lies about me saying things I never said. He once called me in front of all our friends, my fiancé included, just to yell "you're a bad friend" into the phone and then hang up. There's so much to it that I can't share because I'm trying to be somewhat anonymous. It started having an effect on me and my mental health, and I ended up having a full breakdown where I told my fiancé how much this was all starting to hurt me. The first time I broke down over this, he said he would talk to his friend about teasing, messing with me less. He then told me his friend was sorry and that he'd be keeping an ear out for any other comments and he'd jump to my defense if it happened again. A few weeks later I had a second breakdown over all this. The situation itself is hitting a very specific childhood trauma trigger for me, and he admitted that his friend didn't actually apologize. He actually said he was sorry I was too sensitive to understand his humor. At that point I told my fiancé my friendship with this person is over and I want zero contact from here on out, even if it means I have to miss out on events and parties that I'd otherwise love to go to. He agreed with me that all of this is being done with the intention to get a rise out of me, and that even if we tried to get through to this friend he's so diabolical that we could never fully trust him to not treat me at least a little bit shitty. My fiancé kept asking if this meant he had to quit the project they're working on. I told him I would never tell him he had to because I know how much it means to him, but in all honesty, the fact that this person is treating me so poorly that I'm having physical stress reactions isn't enough for him to want to cut this person off does hurt a lot. The fact that it isn't a deal breaker for him is probably always going to sting a little. He's not confrontational at all and I always knew that, but it's not about confrontation. It's about standing in my corner. And I can't spend the rest of my life with someone who isn't in my corner. This friend is getting married to my best friend in a few months and we're both supposed to be in the wedding, but I really have no clue how. I get a literal knot in my stomach anytime his name is even mentioned now. I have seen this friend one time since all of this came to a head and he was so over the top nice to me that it came off as cocky. I had the second breakdown a few days afterwards because I realized I'm possibly going to spend the rest of my life on edge and on guard anytime this person is even somewhat in my vicinity. Even if they aren't actively fucking with me. I don't know how to come to terms with the fact that my fiancé was willing to lie to me on his shitty friend's behalf, but he's not willing to stand in my corner against him. I think it'll always hurt. This guy was supposed to be the best man in our wedding, and as a result we haven't been talking much about wedding plans. I think if he's still planning on this friend being in our wedding I may have to call it off for my own sanity, and that sucks so bad. This is fucking eating me alive. I love my fiancé so much. I love his big heart and the way he loves all of it. But he loves some truly wretched people and I don't know if he'll enforce any boundaries with those people before the lack of boundaries becomes too much for me to handle. I'm just hurt. And hurting. And I just want whatever outcome to play out so I can stop feeling so guilty and awful all the time. Comments. Comment 1. If your fiancé will not stick up for you, it's more than just being a people pleaser. He's a doormat. Comment 2. And her best friend isn't much of a friend either, considering the problematic friend is marrying her best friend. She should also be telling him to back off too. Update 1. Never thought I'd actually update this account out of sheer fucking embarrassment, but I wanted to share this for those who encouraged me to put myself first. I want you all to know my partner absolutely came through and protected me in this. We spent all this time since my last post up until last week communicating and trying to find a resolution, and walking through how it got this bad. He took a lot of accountability for that. This is not a case of me giving in. He understands fully that this has only got so bad because it's never been handled correctly, and he had a major hand in that. There were so many more layers to this than a Reddit post ever could have conveyed. The bottom line is we are closer than ever, and after a lot of talking, we decided on my partner sending a firm but not unkind message to his friend explaining the behaviors, explaining that they were hurting his partner, and that it needed to stop. He asked to write up the first draft and we could go over it together to try to perfect it. Reddit, please know the first draft my partner wrote was so spot on what I needed to read that it instantly shifted us into us versus the problem mode when we'd been stuck butting heads for weeks. He laid everything out so clearly and in ways that we hadn't discussed, so I know it came from him. We had to tone down a lot of the big emotions. We really truly gave the message its best shot to address the situation without being hostile. We knew the response would be bad no matter what, but I don't think anything could have fucking prepared us. This man went full scorched earth and blew up everything almost immediately. He insulted my partner. He told him these events didn't happen the way I claim they do. He demanded they meet up alone with a mediator. He even threatened to reach out to my partner's parents to fill them in, which is probably the moment we stopped taking his responses seriously. All of us are almost in our 30s. If once wasn't enough, he threatened it twice. We actually had to call them and warn them that he would be showing up at their place later this week and not to open the door. There's still a good chance he'll attempt it. We stayed respectful throughout all of this, which I feel good about. We didn't stoop to his level. We didn't insult anyone. We asked for basic human respect and somehow it blew up spectacularly. In the end, we both received a massive wall of text from my now ex-best friend, fully backing up her man and telling her side of the story, which is so insanely far off from what actually happened that all I can do is laugh. We've been shifting from crying to being dumbstruck to just straight up laughing because of the absurdity. I went into this thinking she was brainwashed, but it turns out I was wrong. They're a perfect match. I wish them all the best. I am sending them one last message setting the record straight, which my partner and I decided together was the best approach apart from just ghosting, before moving on from this entirely. I'm going to make it very clear this is done. Zero contact indefinitely and I will never look back. My partner and I both deserve way better friends and we both see that so clearly now. I am so fucking glad I learned my friend's true colors before we dropped $800 on a hotel for their wedding. Thank you to everyone who was kind. Not only did I put myself first in the end, but my partner did too. We're going to take this week in stride and process it all, grieve the friendships we once thought were forever, and at the end of the week we have a conveniently timed vacation to my partner's family cottage. I think we're going to come out of this stronger, because we already feel it. Again, thank you to those who had something productive to say. And I've made my peace with all the rest. I guess if the guy does something else outlandish, maybe I'll update, but for now, this chapter is closed and I'm so ready for it to start collecting dust. Comments. Comment 1. It sounds like both of your ex-friends were from your people's pleasing days. It's time for a fresh start. And I'm glad you're both going to get it before your wedding so they're not in the photos. Comment 2. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Wishing you both peace. Update 2. Hey all, told myself I wouldn't update again but there has been a pretty massive development. Not sure if anyone is really that invested in this shit show but it's actually helped me to type it out the first couple times so maybe I'll feel a bit better if I do it again. Sorry in advance for how disgustingly long this is gonna be lol. A few weeks ago the asshole showed his entire hand. He sent my partner a message at 11 a.m. on a Monday and it is the most unhinged shit I've ever read. I'll sum it up for you. The asshole said he believed my partner is in an abusive relationship and he should leave me, for his own happiness. He claimed he has evidence to support this. He admitted this was the big message he would have given had they met in person in the very beginning. He also told him he was worried sending the message would make things even worse for my partner if I saw it. He said I am someone he can never forgive and he will never want to associate with ever again. He ended it by saying he hopes he'll leave me so my partner can apologize for breaking up the band. Yes, it was a band. And they can start to repair their friendship. Obviously a whole lot to digest. I know y'all don't know me, but I'm obviously not abusing my partner lol. I shouldn't even have to clarify that, but I will anyway. This guy is 100% excommunicated from our lives indefinitely, not that he already wasn't at that point. In light of this new info, I'd like to share some of the things the asshole has done over the past year or so that made me realize he was fucking with me, but I didn't clock at the time because, much like some of you, I thought I was just being sensitive. My partner and I joined some pals, including an asshole, to play a game together online. Lethal Company if you're familiar. I have many hours in the game and know the monsters quite well, so I was pretty confused when I was slaughtered by a bracket 3 game days in a row, almost immediately upon entering the facility and splitting from the group. I mentioned at one point that I'd be having a lot more fun if I wasn't dying so quickly every time, and the asshole mockingly said it must be a skill issue. After a few more deaths, this time with me at least getting to explore a bit before getting my neck snapped, I asked if anyone had the Control Company mod installed, which allows the server host to play as the monsters. Suddenly the asshole had to go, and the lobby conveniently disbanded. I never brought my suspicions up to anyone because I knew it would be my word against his and I had no solid proof so I wasn't positive, but when I finally mentioned it to my partner a couple of weeks ago after that text was sent he told me he remembers the asshole staying on the ship and secretly going AFK multiple times in the game, which lines up pretty perfectly with my in-game deaths. When I said the asshole was being too nice, the time we saw him after my partner called him about his comments affecting me. I don't think I explained it right. My partner and I were sitting at a table at a local show and the asshole sat next to me, not my partner, and wouldn't stop touching my arm and asking me if I was enjoying the show. Multiple times he would just stare at me and grin as wide as he could. If I'd just been told something I did hurt my friend's partner, I don't think I'd be all over them the way this guy was to me. Hell, if it were me I'd at least throw a sorry about the other night their way. It felt like he was gloating that he got away with it. It was comically over the top and made me and my partner very uncomfortable. We talked on the drive home and we both felt the same about it. I was hanging out with my friend at her place and an asshole was there, so we all decided to head to my place and hang with my partner as a foursome. Right before we left, the asshole asked if I knew our mutual friend's big secret. I did not. I'm also not very close with this friend. My friend already knew and told him they should just tell me because I wouldn't be that invested, but asshole told her my partner didn't know yet and they couldn't tell me until we all got to my place and told him. He kept going on about how big the secret was and insisted that I'd freak out once I knew. I made a comment about how we were taking different cars and there was a chance my friend would just tell me on the way. So he looked her dead in the face and told her that he'd be genuinely upset with her if she told me before he told my partner. We respected that. When we got to my place, it was obvious my partner already knew. The big secret was simply that our friend was dating someone. I found out later that the asshole had called my partner the minute he got to his car and told him that both me and my friend didn't know and they should put on a big show of telling both of us together. My partner had known for weeks and the friend group had openly discussed it a few times, and it hadn't come up with me because, as I said, I'm not very close with this friend. I got baited lol. Truly exhausting behavior. My partner had no idea what happened until I told him about the conversation at the asshole's place and my friend didn't say a word in my defense. I typed out exactly why this was ridiculous once all this came to a head and they both refused to even acknowledge it. I dyed my hair blue. My first outing with the new hair was with the whole group. I went all out on my makeup and outfit and was pretty stoked on it. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest when I say the asshole made 20+ jokes about my hair in the span of about 15 minutes. It was pretty much every time he interacted with me, which he seemed to go out of his way to do specifically so he could make jokes about my hair. If you've ever had blue hair then you've probably heard most of the jokes he was making. I laughed along for the first few. I can definitely handle banter as it's a huge part of almost all of my friendships, but after about 20 jokes I finally said it was getting old and asked if he had anything nice to say. He responded by making another 5 jokes with a big shit-eating grin on his face and implied I was too sensitive. There truly was no off switch with the guy. Anyways, just wanted you all to know I'm not crazy. The asshole has literally been trying to drive me mad for at least a year and it almost worked. My partner and I have had many conversations about all this, and I know a lot of people had a lot to say about him, but please know this was eating both of us alive. He wanted to make things work so badly, he wanted to at least try to salvage their 20+ year friendship. But he understands now that was never possible, and he knows neither of us deserve to be treated the way the asshole treated us. This was never just about me. If he was a good friend to my partner, maybe things would be different and we could have tried harder to get through to him, but this is just who he is at his core. He's known for being a prick for no reason and lying about it. And there's no space in either of our lives for that. Anyways, I doubt the asshole can top that message, so this is the last update I'll give. My partner and I are coming out of this way stronger. The asshole has completely brainwashed my friend, and I've made my peace with it. She can have him lol. Godspeed to the both of them. Thanks to all who showed understanding. Hopefully this is all going to be behind us very soon, once the dust fully settles. Comment: it all sounds like he was jealous of you and was threatened by your relationship with your fiancé. He probably felt that you were taking his best friend away from him. Just a quick question. Did you date your fiancé before or after your ex-best friends started dating? It's just that if they started after you, he could have done it to punish you and take her away from you or to make sure he stayed close to your fiancé. Also, did it ever cross your mind that your ex-best friend was in love with him, because his behavior sounds indicative of a jealous ex-lover? I'm not saying that your fiancé was in love with him, or even did anything with him, only that his ex-best friend's feelings could have been one-sided and not known to your fiancé. Anyway, I hope that you two can concentrate on your wedding now that the toxic people are out of your life and that you both have a wonderful future together and a beautifully unforgettable wedding. Update me if your toxic ex-best friends do anything else, but I honestly hope that they don't. OOP. The asshole met my friend through me. And I truly don't think he was in love with my partner, just loved to control him. He tries to control everyone around him. My son's homophobic insults and false abuse claims against my husband forced me to send him to live with his mom. This entire situation is kinda fucked and honestly I'm a bit heartbroken for my husband. Real names IDC: I'm Sean 37M, my husband is Zach 36M and my son is 16, not saying his name. I divorced my ex-wife after she cheated on me for the entirety of our marriage. That was over a decade ago. IDC anymore. Son is mine already over and done. I met Zach when I was 28, my son was 7. Me and Zach hit it off instantly. I was finally in a place to start dating again, and thankfully he was the first person I was interested in. We connected on everything me and my ex-wife did and a million more things. People say life has a plan for you, and honestly I believe it. I'd go through a million more divorces and be cheated on over and over if I ended up with him every time. One of the big things was my son. Zach was hesitant at first just because of the situation, but he wanted a family badly and I was excited for him to meet my son. After dating for a year, I talked to my ex and told her I'm introducing our son to a guy I'm seeing, told her it's serious and I see a future with him. She was happy for me. We have a very good relationship now. Just told me to tell her when I was going to do it so she could be prepared if our son had any questions for her when he visited next. Zach and my son were best friends. Did everything together. They loved playing Minecraft together. They spent hours sitting in front of the TV. I loved watching them. I was so fucking happy the first person I found after my ex was this amazing. After about 6 months I asked Zach to move in and the rest is exactly as I've been describing. Amazing. My son started calling Zach his other dad when he was 10. Very sweet moment, which makes this hurt worse. Well, last weekend my son had 3 of his friends over. They were playing video games in his room and I'd just left to do grocery shopping for the week, so it was just them and Zach. I don't know how this topic came up, but things got very homophobic. My husband was sitting on the couch and I guess my son and his friends thought me and he left, but it was just me. My son's room is connected to the living room, so if you're sitting in the living room it's not super hard to hear what's going on in his room if he's being loud enough. 4 teenage boys playing video games. One of them said how it feels having a F-slur, IDK if I can say it or not on here, as a father. My son laughed and said it was kinda shitty. They said my husband probably touched him when he was little and my son replied, he can try it now, he'll get his ass beat. So not even being a dick to Zach but now also threatening him over something we all know he would never do. They kept saying shit like, which one do you think takes it in the ass? Probably the F-slur, at least your real dad still likes women. Just a bunch of hateful shit. My husband sat there listening to it all silently crying. Also Zach has spent a good 4 hours a day at the gym for the last 3 years, so IDK who's getting their ass beat, but it ain't him. I got home about 2 hours later to my husband sitting in his car with a bag packed waiting for me so he could leave but didn't want to leave my son alone. I asked what's going on, why are you leaving, and he told me everything. I tried to understand as best I could. I insisted he wasn't serious. He's just being a stupid kid acting tough with his friends, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Zach left and I went inside and went off on my son. His friends left and I spent a good 3 hours going back and forth with my son. At first he was very unapologetic and kind of agreed with his friends. I asked if he actually thought my husband sexually abused him when he was younger and he said no, but kids block those kinds of memories out, so really who knows. I told him to pack his shit, he's living with his mother. His mom lives 3 hours away, which means new school, new friends if at all, less private space as he'd have to share a room with his stepbrother, etc. Just everything that you'd expect going from a single kid in a house to one of 4. My son instantly changed his attitude. He was crying, begging me not to send him away. He didn't mean it, he was just lying to seem cool to his friends. I asked why he doubled down when they left and he didn't have an answer. I told him to pack his shit, he's leaving in the morning. My ex told her the situation and she agrees he needs something drastic. What he did wasn't okay at all. Fast forward to now and my husband is back, but he cries every night. Honestly, it feels like he's mourning, which I don't want, because when you mourn you don't get over someone, you get as close to indifferent as possible to keep living your life without them. I don't want that. I want my husband and my son to have that strong bond I know they have and don't want them to throw it away over this. I don't agree with what my son did, but those accusations at minimum can ruin someone's life and at most end it. I'm disgusted with my son. He calls me every day and tells me he misses me and Zach and wants to come home. I stay strong on the phone, but after I break down and my husband tries to console me. Tell me my son can come back and he will leave, but no, I'm not doing that. I just don't know what to do. I miss my son. I miss coming home and seeing them spending time together. I've thought about therapy for him, but he said no. You can't force therapy on someone. They'll just sit there for an hour and piss away $400. I need advice. Comments. Comment 1, NTA. Therapist here, but obviously everyone is different, so take it with a grain of salt. Parenting is sometimes wildly difficult, and this is one of those times. You did exactly the right thing. There are so many lessons for your son to learn here. Just name a few. He needs to not only learn the consequences of his actions, but that some things truly cannot be taken back. Trying to be cool by being an asshole for absolutely no reason will not end well. It will not only alienate the people who actually care about you, but the people who get off on being unkind will eventually turn on you too. Most people do not get along with their step-parents and he has been taking that for granted. Separately, if you let him back and Zach leaves, your relationship with your son will be forever altered as well as your son's life in general. All the love Zach has for him and their connection can be repaired once he gets his head out of his ass. If Zach leaves, your son will know he ruined his father's relationship for the rest of his life. The guilt and resentment from that can cause huge problems later on in life. This can be worked on. It can be resolved. I strongly suggest making family therapy a requirement for moving back into the house with an LGBTQIA+ friendly therapist who can get down to the root of how harmful this was and make him understand that. Individual therapy is also a great idea, but family dynamic stuff needs to take priority. Comment 2. This is great advice, but considering the man alleged he was possibly a pedophile, OP's husband clearly isn't going to risk his future on someone who is capable of being that callous. I wouldn't either. This is fixable, but it doesn't mean it will be. It's not any different if a blended family comes together, and the daughter accuses her stepdad of touching her. There was literally a post 2 months ago about this exactly. He moved out, divorced the mom, and refused to stop the divorce once she confessed her bio dad put her up to it so he could fuck with the mom. Kid thought dad would come back if it happened. Newsflash, he didn't. That said, everyone told him that his future wasn't worth risking it. Just because he didn't get a full-on accusation and a police investigation doesn't mean he should be asked to risk it. I'm saying the same here. Zach said he would move out if the son came back. I think we are likely beyond counseling, at least for a while, certainly not while he's a minor. There's hope in the future though, and this is the way. Comment 3. Yep, I wouldn't risk it and neither should Zach. Some things cannot be taken back. Some harms cannot be undone. Comment 4. I tell my kids this when we talk about choosing our words. Words are like toothpaste. Once you squeeze it out of the tube, it's almost impossible to put it back. Update. 2 days later. This will be long. Sorry. Not going to lie, the entire OG post was basically a disaster. I expected a few replies with only one actually being helpful and then the post died. Didn't happen that way. So much back and forth and so much hate towards me being gay. I expected some, but holy shit. I was done with that post when someone suggested that me and my husband both abuse my son sexually just now. Disaster. I thought living in bumfuck Montana was bad with the homophobic shit I deal with. As for the update, I spent the day yesterday with my son. A lot of people accused me of not taking his claim seriously. I did. The first 30 minutes of our initial talk when this all happened was about if he actually was abused. He said no. I asked again when I got here. I made sure to let him know there is no one I'd believe over him. He won't be punished for saying the truth if he was abused for not, but I needed to know. Again he said no, he was never touched or raped by my husband. On to the questions and his answers. Why would you say something so dangerous? My son said he was feeling rejected by my husband since as of late he hasn't been spending nearly as much time with him. Which is true. A large part of my husband's life is my son. Zach tutors him, he coaches him in his sport, basketball, he goes on morning runs with my son, he used to drive him to and from school before my son got his car. They both share a lot of interests and as a kid-step-parent dynamic they spend a lot of time together. Towards the end of last year's summer when my son was still with his mother's, my husband talked to me. He said he wanted to start spending more time apart, but not that kind of apart. He wanted to have more of a social life. He wanted to be able to do things away from us but not like separate, if that makes sense. He realized my son would be leaving for college in 2-ish years and my son was such a large part of his life he didn't want to become depressed after he left with nothing to do. I agreed and said it was a good idea and he had my full support as long as he still came home every night at a reasonable time and didn't let his relationship with my son suffer or anything. As of now, yes, it is different. My son doesn't need rides to school, he doesn't need tutoring, he doesn't do basketball anymore. Their hobbies are still the same, but my husband has been spending less time at home. It's not like he's gone all hours of the day and comes back at 3 a.m., but he has a healthy social life. IDK, how to explain it? Do you realize how dangerous it is to say something like that if it isn't true? He said yes and he didn't think anyone was listening. He was just going along with his friend's shit. That didn't make sense to me, so I asked why he stood by his statement after I sent his friends home. He said he thought he shouldn't back down from something he says. Kind of like a ride or die IDK. I told him that's fucking stupid and never do that. Especially if he regrets what he said and it wasn't true in the first place. He said he knows he realized that when it happened but he just couldn't stop himself from keeping it up. It didn't hit him that it was serious until I told him he's going to stay with his mother. Why do you want to be friends with people that talk so much shit about your parents? He doesn't want to, but the kids bully the shit out of everyone they don't like and he feels like he's in too deep to back out now. I do understand, I had kids in my school like that. Bully everyone. They were cool to me though until they found out I was gay, then they fucked my last few years of high school up. I told him I get it to some degree, but he doesn't have to add into what they're saying. Small chuckle and a fuck you is usually enough to get people to move on from something. I also asked about them bullying him because they kind of were. He said yeah, but they're not that bad with it. They just rip into him every so often about having gay dads, and I guess over time it made my son feel poorly towards my husband. The distance my husband was setting with my son mixed with his friends saying the shut they did just added up to that. I told him I understood. I want to make it clear, I don't support what he said. I understand the emotions behind it though. Why didn't you talk to us about how you were feeling? He said he didn't want to start anything. My husband and he are still close. He didn't know how he felt and was more confused than anything. So why say something that would cause a fight if he didn't even know if he felt that way? I also understood this. At this point I think this is just one miscommunication after another. Open dialogue would have prevented all of this from happening. There were a lot more questions, but me and my ex ended with, do you actually feel remorseful for what you said, or are you just tired of sleeping in the same room as a 7-year-old? He's actually remorseful. Told me even if he was staying there all year he would still feel terrible over what he said about Zach. Reassuring him again, if anything did happen, now is the time to speak and I will believe him again. He said no. He started crying saying he just missed us. Emotional moment. We hugged, told him I loved him and that would never change. Asked him to leave the room so me and his mother could talk. We decided on a month-to-month assessment to see when he would get privileges back. Ending with him coming home. There were conditions to all of this, like family therapy, solo therapy, cutting his friends off completely, which I would help with. He was against the solo therapy but came around. He asked if Zach was here. I said no, but would ask him if he wanted to come next time, which my son smiled at. I still agree sending my son to my ex-wife's was the right move. A lot of people aggressively disagree. Which is fine. My parenting style isn't for everyone. One of you told me I should beat the kids up though, so like, do I really care if some of you disagree with how I patent IDK? Not really. Situation still sucks IDK, what to say. I miss my son. He isn't coming home right now and I wish I was leaving her house with him. As it stands right now, son is living with his mother and her family. He will get his phone and PS5 and car back at the end of the first, second and third month. In that order he will be able to move out of the room he's currently in, out into the guest house at the end of month 4. Every month after that is touch and go, and we'll discuss at the end of each month what we think son will do. Bi-weekly solo therapy, and we will all do bi-weekly family therapy. We see it as he should do solo therapy one week, then family therapy the next. He can come back sooner. I want him back. My husband wants him back. He's wanted him back since he left. His mother is holding strong, but she also sees he's just miserable, so I think she'll break at some point and give up the guest house early. It is what it is. At the end of the night my son asked if Zach would want to hear from him so he could apologize, and I told him yes. I've told him yes a few times now. Zach would love to hear from him. I doubt he'd have to wait longer than one ring before Zach picked up. My son called him as I was leaving, so I know they spoke IDK about what though. When I got home Zach was feeling like shit and blaming himself more for all of this. I told him it's no one's fault, we just needed to talk to each other more. All in all, I think my son is remorseful and he was just feeling trapped and isolated in a shitty situation and didn't know how to get out of. I feel for him and I wish I saw what was happening sooner. Thank you all for the advice. Or most of you. Some of you were just nasty and hateful. Someone on my first post called Stoner Therapist something like that gave good fucking advice. I didn't say it on that post, but if you read this good shit, thanks for it. Next update will be when he comes home. Hopefully it will be soon. Thanks y'all. Comments. Comment 1. Hey, sounds like you've had a heck of a roller coaster. Family dynamics can turn into a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces are hiding under the couch cushions. You did what you thought was best in a tough situation. And it's clear you care deeply for your son and your husband. Props to you for navigating such choppy waters and for keeping communication open, even when it's as fun as stepping on Legos in the dark. It's great to hear that you're setting up some therapy. It's like oiling the squeaky wheels of family interaction. Just remember, healing and understanding take time, like fine wine or figuring out why the printer won't work even though it's plugged in and the Wi-Fi is fine. Keeping my fingers crossed that your family puzzle comes together smoothly, even if it takes a bit more searching under the furniture for those missing pieces. Here's to hoping the next update is full of good news and homecomings. Comment 2, screw those assets that show hate. Sounds like you have a wonderful battle plan in action. Hope your son makes the right choices in friends going forward.